Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about formulating a great research question. Writing a researchable research question is singularly the most important part of your research planning. Why do you think that is? Well, first of all, it gives your project focus. You know exactly what you intend to study, and for starters, which literature that you're going to search for. It identifies the variables of interest in your study. So the variables of interest are your independent and your dependent variables, and those are the areas that you're going to have to learn the most about. Literally, all other activities flow from your research question, your literature review, your methods, your data analysis, and every other part of the research project. You'll always come back to your research question to give you focus. Um, for example, you'll need this focus as you sort through mounds of research. As we start doing an online literature review, it's easy to fall down what I call rabbit holes. And these are areas that relate to our topic and are interesting, but don't necessarily help us in answering our research question. So you need to have that research question as an anchor for your research project. So I just wanted to give you today some tips for formulating a great research question. This is also outlined in your readings and various postings on your readings for the week on our course site. But my first and greatest tip is to have you draw from your practice, areas of personal interest, passion that you have. I pursued study of therapeutic touch because it was very helpful for my husband's peripheral neuropathy pain. He initially was started on opioid analgesics, and he couldn't stay on those forever. Excuse me. So we were told to just go home and, you're just going to have to manage the best you can. So really, you're not given any concrete way to manage your disease at times when there aren't any great answers. So I studied therapeutic touch, for example. I'm interested in other things that affected me personally. I've shared with you diabetes management, how important that is to me. And now palliative care, because I've watched my parents go through kind of a disorderly dying experience. So I don't want other people to have to go through some of the things that my family went through. On another side of the coin, you might want to work on areas that affect you in your practice. I one time studied retention in nursing schools and the impact of paying attention to learning styles on retention. That was my master's thesis. And I got a lot of support for that from my organization. So think about what you could do, either that's a personal interest or a professional interest within your organization, because your passions will drive you to do the work that's needed. Secondly, ensure that the study passes the so what test. Now, when you ask the research question, do people really care about it? When you look further in literature, is it really a problem? Is it something we already know the answer to? I had a student one time who wanted to study whether eating a lot of carbs contributes to obesity. And I had to tell her, I'm sorry, we already know the answer to that question, so there's no point in studying it. And that's why we tell you to look for gaps in the literature. Those are the areas that are fruitful for study, and you have to take the time to explore the literature to find them. Oftentimes, if you look at research articles and suggestions for future research, if they have that section of the article, you'll get ideas for other areas that need more study. So I would suggest completing a cursory literature review, just a quickie one, to see how the subject has been studied in the past. And that's one of the reasons why. You'll also get some ideas. You might be interested in a topic like diabetes management and increasing compliance, but you don't know what you could do to increase compliance. So other researchers will give you some ideas of things that they've studied and that need further study. So check what solutions to the research problem have been studied in that literature. And this too will help you isolate variables and concepts of interest. When I was interested in therapeutic touch and pain management, I found that some researchers felt that it was through the relaxation response that pain was decreased. So I also decided to study the impact of therapeutic touch on fibromyalgia pain and also anxiety. Because if I didn't see an effect on the pain, I might see it on anxiety. And by the way, I saw a statistically significant difference when each subject had therapeutic touch versus a placebo on both anxiety and pain. So that was fun. It's very interesting to see your results after all your hard work is put in. So when you decide upon these variables, they have to be something that's measurable. So that's why I said earlier a researchable research project. So although some questions might be interesting, they may not be easy to measure. So you need to pick variables that you can somehow measure if you're doing a quantitative study. So consider the design and methods that you might have to use to answer the research question as written. For example, if you ask, what is the nature of the experience of being post-op on the first day post-mastectomy? That might not be easily answered with a quantitative study. That sounds more like a qualitative type study and a phenomenological study, which is a type of qualitative research that explores the nature of the experience that someone is having. So you would have to do interviews and analyze verbal data, and that's going to be a little bit different, and it might be more time consuming. So you need to consider that factor as well. You need to think ahead what kind of design might be necessary to answer the research question that I have in place as written. You also need to be practical in terms of, so really what I was talking about is being practical in terms of time. Maybe you don't have time to run a phenomenological study. Is the study going to cost too much? For example, if you're testing the effects of an app managing a disease, but the app is going to cost $75 for the length of the study per person, that might not be the type of study that you want to carry out. So how much money is it going to cost you? And do you have access to the subjects, to the data, to whatever you need to answer the research question? So that's why working on a work-related problem is helpful, because you'll tend to be pushed through quickly. You may be able to get IRB approval a little more quickly because you have the attention of the committee. You're an associate at that organization, and oftentimes managers want to see your research go through. So really think about all those things this week as you contemplate what your research question might be. And as I said, in this course, you need to only pick a research question so that you can do the course exercises. However, I think you should really try to start your research projects for the program while in this course. It'll help you out immensely. So give that some thought, please. So, one of our course outcomes, so our broader course outcomes, states that you need to create a research question using the PICO format. Well, PICO, it's just an acronym. It helps you to isolate the necessary parts of the research question. So we would encourage you to pick a population of interest. Are you going to work with elders? Are you just going to work with adults from 18 to 65 who know how to read? to be very specific. Are you going to work with middle schoolers aged 12 to 16? Who is it that you're going to study? What intervention, if any, of interest are you going to study? So when I say if any, you might not have an I to as a part of your research question. It might vary a little bit. Maybe you're doing a descriptive study, but in essence, you could still be studying two groups. Maybe you're studying, for example, how long it takes to admit patients through the ER versus direct admissions to a unit. So there's no intervention, but there are two groups. And that gets to see where you might have the comparison with another intervention or issue. And I just gave you that. Two different groups who are being treated in different ways, gives you a comparison. Oftentimes we have pre-treatment, post-treatment studies in clinical environments where we might look at values before and after we do something with a client. You need to have outcomes or measures, things that you're measuring. In the fibromyalgia study that I mentioned, I was measuring pain and anxiety. And unfortunately, those two concepts are subjective, but that's the best we have. So we use various surveys oftentimes in healthcare to measure complex concepts like anxiety, depression, pain, um, self-efficacy, self-esteem, um, all those kinds of factors. We have lots of measures to choose from. And also, excuse me, finally, there's the time frame. How long are you going to study these subjects or this issue? Is it going to be an immediate response that you're looking for, or will it take a period of 2 months, 3 months, 2 weeks? What's the time frame? So when you write your research questions, you need to address all of these elements. Even if you don't have an intervention, state, I do not have an intervention. Write the question out in full and then explain the PICO2 further in paragraph format. So best wishes to each of you in formulating your research question. Don't forget to talk to your professor and your classmates. This is a time where sharing ideas is very helpful, and you have the ability to do that online. You can call others up if they want to work with you. You can call me up. So I would encourage you to discuss at this time because that really helps to narrow down your research question. Other people can give you some great ideas to help flesh out your own ideas. They may have a lot of experience with your variables or concepts. Remember to read this week on our course site because that will help you to become an even more knowledgeable nurse scholar. Thank you. Bye.